What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back to take a look at another edition for the Detroit Lions this offseason around the draft circuit. And today, we are taking a look at one of the Lions' more expensive undrafted free agent signings. It's at the tackle position, so let's get it started.
The city's been down, and it found a way to get up. And when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down. We're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing.
Welcome, everybody, to our video. Glad you guys are here. We are back to take a look at another addition to the Detroit Lions this offseason. And today we're taking a look at an undrafted free agent signing. We're going to continue to take a look at the Lions draft picks, break those guys down individually, but we're going to do the exact same thing with the undrafted free agent signings. Now, rookie minicamp is going to take place in a few days, so clearly we're not going to be able to get to all of those guys individually before rookie minicamp, but I am probably going to do kind of an overview video of who is going to be at Lions rookie minicamp. But I want to break down each of these players individually, give them all a fair shake, so I can take a look, step back, and be like, okay, will this guy make the team? What is his potential role for the Detroit Lions? As we do the same thing with the draft picks. And you guys know me. I was big about adding an offensive tackle in this year's draft. And the Lions did not do that. But they did give out some money to an undrafted free agent that a lot of people thought would get drafted. And that is offensive tackle Obinna Eze. All right, if I'm messing up his name, I apologize. But I even had this little thing that's like, here's how you pronounce it. So I'm pretty sure we're good to go. He's an offensive tackle from Nigeria that came over in 2015, but he didn't come over to actually play football. He came over to play basketball, but decided to try out for football, and obviously football stuck.
The complete change of plans. Like, I didn't come, I had never seen a football in my life. I've never watched a clip. I've never seen shoulder pads or helmets on TV, on the internet, anything. I've never seen anything football. I've never seen a football field on TV. Like, there's no satellite in Nigeria or no cable that shows football in Nigeria. It's non-existent.
Came out of high school as one of the top recruits in the nation. Probably some of that had to do with the fact that he came out of high school at 6'7", 280 pounds. I mean, that's not really normal. That's a very big guy. So I can see why there was a lot of interest. Teams like Alabama, Florida, Auburn, even though he was extremely raw and completely new and very new to the position, it was still like, oh my gosh, look at this dude. So he ends up going to Memphis. And I guess the reason that he ended up choosing to go to Memphis was because he liked their coaches the best. Makes tons of sense. He redshirted his freshman season, and he went on to play 3 seasons with Memphis in college, and he had a lot of starts that he racked up. In 2018, he played in 6 games. All of those games came at left tackle.
I didn't choose left tackle for the money. I chose left tackle because it resonated with who I was. Like, I'm somebody who takes pride in being dependable. I'm somebody who takes pride in being relied on. You know what I'm saying? And because that's what I did in basketball. I was a defensive guy. I wasn't a guy to score 100 points or 40, 50 points a game, but I give you 15, 16 rebounds. I give you 4 or 5 blocks.
2018, it was his redshirt freshman season where he played in 6 games. All of those games were at left tackle. Didn't take a ton of snaps, just 67 snaps on the season. However, in 2019, he became the starting left tackle for Memphis. He started in all of their 14 games. And in 2020, same thing continued. As a junior, he started in 11 games at tackle for Memphis. But then he ended up transferring for his final season. The reason that I've seen that he did that was because he wanted to face better competition. And of course, if you do really well in the Big 12, maybe that gets you a better look when it comes to the draft side of things. Plus, you just want to challenge yourself. You feel like you played well. According to Pro Football Focus, he was their highest graded out offensive lineman in his final season at Memphis with a 75.8 grade. He transfers over to TCU, which had some depth. They had some pieces. They had some young guys along that offensive line. But of course, he comes in, plugs in, and he's the starting left tackle, which is pretty darn impressive. And what's even more impressive is that he didn't just come in and start. He came in and held his own. He started 12 games last season with TCU, which means that he would finish his career with 37 consecutive starts at the left tackle position. So he's definitely had some experience. He's coming out a little bit older, 24 years old. So something to note, a little bit older. Some people don't love that when it comes to prospects. May have been part of the reason that he ended up ultimately going undrafted, is because he's a little bit on the older side. Also, when you take a look at some of his combine results, it wasn't the most athletic scores. However, He had a really nice season in 2021. He appeared at the NFL Combine, the East-West Shrine Bowl, which is very important because we've had a couple players that we picked up from the East-West Shrine Bowl, including our cornerback, Chase Lucas, including our linebacker, James Houston. And in 2021, he was an honorable mention Big 12 Offensive Newcomer of the Year. So just a little background on who Eze is. But we're here for one thing, and that is to dive into the film of this player. Oh wait, before we do that, let's actually take a look at this production and also take a look at the combine results. Now I know production, yeah, it's a tackle, but we'll look at the bad. It's only bad production when you're looking at offensive lineman. It really is. It's just like, how many sacks did you give up? Okay, that's not good. But let's start with the combine results first. So the guy ran a 5.17 40, which was 14th among offensive tackles. Again, this was at the combine, so keep that in mind. 18 bench press reps, definitely does not stand out, especially at his size, but he is very long, which we'll get into.
Physically, because I didn't lift weights in Nigeria. I had 1 year, 1.5 year, or 1 year of real weightlifting in high school. And so, like, I definitely had a lot of growing and getting stronger to do.
27.5-inch vertical, an 8.2-second three-cone drill, which would have been 12th among offensive tackles, and a 5.08-second 20-yard shuttle, which would have been 14th. But here is the number that does stick out, and that's that he has 36 and 1/8-inch arms. Those are extremely long arms. It would be the longest arms, I believe, of any lineman that we have. Maybe not Big V, but those are extremely long arms. 36 and 1/8 inches are extremely long. So you look at the athletic scores, they're not great. Maybe the bench press wasn't great. Obviously, when you have long arms, it makes it a little bit tougher. But the frame that he has, 6'6.5", 36-inch arms, 321 pounds. And by the way, with that 40 time, while it's maybe not outstanding, you got to keep in mind he's a tackle, 5.17. It's not bad. It's actually pretty good. And he had a 1.79 10-yard split, which is not bad either. Now, the agility grade was extremely poor, which does show up, I think, a little bit. He's a little bit less quick. Statistically speaking, last season, like I said, he did hold his own. PFF gave him a 70.6 grade, playing over 700 snaps last season, over 385 pass blocking snaps, where he was accounted for allowing 4 sacks, 1 quarterback hit, which to me doesn't make a ton of sense, but I don't know. I guess it's because he did have the football. Anyways, and 11 hurries. So let's talk a little bit about Obinna Eze here. Now, we're going to break this down to run blocking, pass protection, all those things, but I do want to make a couple of notes in the athletic side before we get into that, and we'll continue to touch on it as we go through this. But when we talk about the combine scores, we do understand that that's not, everything about the athleticism side. There also is a very big part, which is the flexibility, the balance, the body control. All of those things also come into the athleticism side. The build is part of that, and so is some of those combine scores that he did put up. When you talk about the guy's frame, he has a really good frame. As we said, coming out of high school, he was like 280 pounds at 6'6". He's put on weight at the college level. Right now, the weight that he's coming out as, he could probably stick at that weight in the NFL, but I do think there is potential to possibly add some mass, add some strength within the lower body, specifically to help him a little bit as a run blocker, just get a little bit more drive power there. We'll get to that, but he does have a really nice frame. But then, as we said, with athleticism, it's also about the balance, the body control, all of those things, specifically in pass protection, and we're going to hit on it probably multiple times, but it does show up, and we know that he has that basketball background. You could say he's a little bit leaner, actually, in the lower body right now than like a big, bulky driver kind of guy. He's a little bit leaner in the lower body, but it shows up in pass protection. He's just pretty fluid in his movements, good body control. You don't really ever see him on the ground in pass protection. The redirection ability. You also see some of the flexibility in his lower body, in the knees and the ankles. And that does show up a little bit as a run blocker as well. We have a clip that we'll take a look at there, but I did want to take note of that athleticism part. And to add on to that, this is a player that has lined up in a three-point stance. And I've seen this multiple times. I know it's not a huge note, but it does kind of just speak to some of the flexibility that it does have for a guy that's 6'6.5" to be able to line up in a three-point stance off the line of scrimmage comfortably. I think that's a very big, little thing that you could throw in there. Big little thing? Yeah, that makes no sense, but I said it. All right, let's dive into this. Let's take a look at the run blocking, the pass protection, all of those things. Let's start off with the run blocking first. We're going to break this up a little bit in terms of an inline blocker, when space is a blocker, when he's outside, when he's into the second level, those kind of things. So starting off with the run blocker, at his size, you may think he's a little bit more of a mauler. Now, like we said, I think he could use possibly some more mass and more strength in the lower body, which may be something that teams look to do with him. However, right now, he's not really a mauler in the run game. Argue that inline run blocking is the weakest spot of his game. Seriously, I don't know if the grades or whatever shows that, but I think there's a very legitimate argument you could make for that. He does a couple things well. We talked about the flexibility in the knees and the ankles And when it comes to positioning as a run blocker, you get some really good reps like this one against Oklahoma State. Now, I need you to take a look at the hands there, how he keeps his elbow inside. He gets on the pec of the defender, and he's able to drive him back. You can see the ability to reposition his body to open up a run lane here. That kind of thing does show up. It shows up a lot in pass protection, but that kind of thing is there. However, specifically speaking as an inline blocker, he's definitely not a drive blocker as of right now. One big thing that he has, of course, just naturally working against him is his leverage. He's naturally taller than defenders that he lines up against for the most part, and naturally he's losing the leverage battle off the line of scrimmage. So he needs to work to stay low off the line. Sometimes they used him in a three-point stance, but stay low off the line. That way he can try to get under the pads or be at least even in the leverage battle with the defender, because a lot of times that's not the case as an inline blocker. He gets off pretty high as an inline blocker. He gets up too tall, and then he's already losing the leverage battle, which leads to basically no drive. I mean, he doesn't get much push there. And then he's just kind of leaning on guys when it comes to run blocking. There isn't that push. Now, to add into that, you will see him sort of lunge and reach into blocks. Now, some of this is the situation, right? If it's, an RPO, sometimes he'll lunge into blocks while staying back. So that, can happen. But you do see him lunge a little bit as an inline blocker. And when he lunges and he's already losing the leverage battle, this does give him some balance issues. This can lead to guys in a second effort or a push-pull move to kind of just slide off him. This is where you do see him fall. This is where you do see him on the ground. And to also add into that, it does seem like he kind of puts his head down sometimes into contact when it comes to inline run blocking. He's lunging, he's putting his head down, he's not seeing what he's hitting, and his balance gets thrown all out of whack. So right now, he doesn't really show you that drive as a run blocker in line. He's more of a positional blocker that kind of just leans on guys. Occasionally, you get a really nice rep in there where you see some legitimate power, and when he gets his base under him, and let's say you have a defender that's trying to slant against him, or they're playing tall, he's able to get underneath, get a couple steps downfield, have a good base, and he's able to really just deliver a full extension with the two-handed power punch that he has shown sometimes even in pass protection. Then he can jolt guys back. But right now, there's just a very big lack of consistency there, and I think there needs to be an improvement in terms of staying low off the line. That will also help keep his hands a little bit more consistent off the line of scrimmage, because right now, like I said, he's reaching, so his hands get inconsistent, the placement's not always great, and then he's just not getting that drive. Now, when you talk about kind of the jump off the line of scrimmage, right, how quickly can he get off the line? He can get off the line pretty darn quick, and you see it vary based on the pass protection set, right, what he's being asked to do, but he can definitely jump off the line of scrimmage. You see it in zone blocks, you see it in wide run blocks, you see all of those things. The inconsistency he has right now seemingly is the snap count. It's really learning that quarterback's cadence, which is going to be very important for him. That way he can make it more consistent off the line, because there's certain reps where he's the first guy off and he understands his responsibility. Maybe he's got to work towards the second level. It's a backside zone block. He's trying to get connection with a linebacker and he'll jump off the line. But then there's also reps where he's the last guy to move, right? So it's just, I think it's the cadence. It's just he's a little bit late off the line. It's not that he physically can't get off the line as quick as he wants to. As an outside, out in space type of run blocker, there is good here, and this gets you a little excited when you talk about the Lions fit. We saw Matt Nelson last season play as the sixth offensive lineman, a guy that could work towards the second level. He didn't have to be a dominant driver at the point of attack, but he could just position himself, maybe get contact with the guy at the second level, try to open up a run lane. Sometimes Matt Nelson is getting, some of the smaller defenders, linebackers, things like that, edge rushers, where he's just needs to get the proper positioning. While you would like to see the drive improve, this is an area where he can be effective. We've seen him be effective at TCU. They've utilized him on pulling blocks outside the tackle box. They've utilized him on screens. And what you notice is at the second level, he consistently gets hands on linebackers. It's almost like, I think someone worded like this, is like he tags guys at the second level. Now, he doesn't really get much movement, but he does find a way to usually get some connection on the first guy that he sees to sustain into the second level. So that is pretty nice, because it's not about, even running those guys over. It's sometimes just about getting in their way, getting some sort of push, getting some sort of touch on that guy to open up and springboard a big, long run. Now, after getting connection with the first guy, usually it ends after that. See really that athleticism to like, okay, I hit this guy, now I'm going to work to the next one. That's not really a thing with him, but he can get some connection at the second level. And I think a big part of that is his arm length, his ability to really reach, where he doesn't have to be lined up directly across from a guy, and he can still get his hands on defenders and just basically, again, just kind of get in their way. The lateral ability that he has to really work the line of scrimmage and get upfield to the second level. And he has a pretty nice burst. It's not bad. He actually has a nice little burst when he's working towards second level. Again, you can use him on zone blocking runs. Now, off the backside, he was used there a lot, but he probably has the quickness to, run zone pass to his direction. Again, it's just about the snap count, being more consistent, jumping off the snap. Specifically is that he is a very high run blocker. We talk about getting off the line high, which would help him if he consistently gets off lower. That way he can help his hands, all of those things. He's not lunging, but he is a very high run blocker, which makes sense. It's hard to be low and work towards the second level and run to the second level. Again, he's pretty fluid where you don't see him like trip over guys, right? Someone's leg gets in his way and he kind of just avoids it. It's just that fluidity, which you're like, dang, that's a big dude to just show some of that lean athleticism. And it doesn't show up as really anything on film, but at the same time, you take that and you just take that note. You have to kind of point to some of that basketball background as potential for helping some of that footwork to do things like that. But he does get extremely high. So again, there's no really drive. Guys can slide off him, but he does find a way to usually get connection at the second level as an outside blocker. They utilized him on screens and he gets some of that burst up field. Sometimes they would utilize him to pull and the ball wouldn't even go his direction. He was just trying to throw off the defense. So as a run blocker, I don't think I would say it's his strong suit right now. Can it be improved? Yes, absolutely, because there are flashes of good reps. I'd say right now he almost looks at his best as a guy that, yeah, could play that sixth offensive lineman role as a run blocker. Let's talk a little bit more about that lower body, about those feet, because right now he's not really an initial or not initial, but a quickness offensive tackle. He's definitely not the quickest offensive tackle that you will see in terms of change of direction, not the most explosive offensive tackle. But what he does have, again, as we said, is some of that body control, a fluid mover and pass protection, and some flexibility in the lower body where you do see the ability to reposition himself, kick out that outside leg when he's, say, protecting the inside, kick out that outside leg to take on an outside speed rusher, whether that's through a stunt or a pass rusher that tried to attack the inside, then counter back outside, to kick out that outside leg, get out there in pass protection, and work to run him out of the pocket. You see that flexibility in the lower body to do that pretty seamlessly, and he does it all the time, especially against stunts. Now, against elite speed rushers in the NFL, and you're going to face a lot of those in the NFL, he would definitely seemingly benefit from having a tight end or someone on his side to try to slow down that rush a little bit. Right now, he's probably best suited for some of these quick pass sets. But in terms of a deep pass set, he shows that ability to really redirect his body on that outside leg, get depth, and try to work outside of the pocket. Now, where he parries as well, and you talk about, utilization of hands, he does some really good things with his hands. He needs to clean up some areas with his hands as well. All right, where he's good with his hands is that he can really just stonewall a defender rushing to passer. How does he do that? Well, he uses his outside hand really well. So let's say he's protecting the inside. You have an outside rush coming his direction. He uses that outside hand extremely well. He does a great job of keeping those elbows in, getting that turn inward, getting on the peck of a defender, which ultimately helps him try to keep his shoulders back, but specifically keeping his head up where he's not leaning or lunging forward, and he can get that major pop and just stonewall guys. And you see it in multiple games where someone's trying to rush the edge, he'll get his outside hand out there, just get it right in the chest, and boom, their head comes back, and they're just like, bam, they're stunned. And then what he does is uses that inside hand on the outside arm and wall him and ride him out of the pocket. Speaking of that for a second, where I think he could improve here is that sometimes it's the decision-making when protecting the edge. There are occasions where you'd like to see him just kind of turn the outside and try to just run him out of the pocket, rather than too often trying to get that outside arm in, connect with the inside of the pass rusher, and stonewall him. Sometimes you would like to see him just try to run them out of the pocket because he can do it. He's shown the ability to do it. And other times you would like to see him utilize more of a violent punch there instead of, again, trying to kind of catch the defender and stop them. Just utilize more of that punch where he gets the base underneath him, punches him, drives him back, and pushes him out of the arc of the pocket. Kind of fall back into the quarterback's lap sometimes. And sometimes those edge rushers, if they get a step or they get even if they're very speedy, possibly turn the corner as he tries to catch them and latch onto the inside, and then they can get around his corner. Here they play a little game with Eze. They're going to have this inside rusher come around to his side. His guy's going to drop into coverage. You talk about maybe lacking some of that quickness, that explosiveness around the edge, but at the same time here, you're going to see him try to give a little two-handed punch on the outside here, but then it turns into him trying to latch on with his outside hand instead of maybe just riding this out of the play as the edge rusher comes around and starts to dip, and he's losing a lot of his power here. So you see him have to reset, work outside. There's the punch. Doesn't get much power on it. Then he tries to latch on and grab, and his guy works around the arc and gets to the quarterback. A lot of these quick pass sets. Ability is there, but when you talk about hands, while he does do some good things with with his hands. Like I said, he can stonewall guys. He does a great job keeping his hands inside, keeping his hands inward. This is very important. It shows up in run blocking as well, but to make sure that you're not, leaning over, you're not putting your head down in pass protection, you're not lunging forward. You get that extension by keeping your elbow in and getting up on an offensive lineman, and that gives him strong anchor potential. But an area, again, where he can prove in terms of utilizing his hands, and it does show up, is not only does he have his hands low down by his hips sometimes, where you'd like to see him keep his hands higher, because when you watch him, it's almost like karate, man. I mean, the guy's got very active hands, and you can see him shifting his hands back and forth to what the pass rusher is showing, trying to play a very patient style in terms of using his hands, which he does. He just could use them better, but he's very patient. But you do see the utilization of adjusting his hands, adjusting his feet to where the pass rusher is showing, whether it's inside or outside. Gets into issues is he has a little bit of a cock back when it comes to striking. And this, again, shows up when protecting the edge. Specifically, you see it against guys that push his inside, where he starts to protect the inside of the pocket. This can also show up on quick sets as well, specifically because it's a quick set, so he's only protecting him for a few seconds, you would hope. But he protects the inside, they attack the inside, so he gets his foot there. Then he's forced to kick back out, reset. And again, this is where you'd like to see some of that decision-making. Maybe they just run him out at times, things like that. But he starts to reset, they get even. And what you notice is when it comes to punching, using that strike to really try to keep him outside the pocket, is that he has this little cock back when he's transitioning in that step back. Instead of keeping his hands, in front of him, he has this cock back where he kind of loads into it. And when you do that, not only are you susceptible to defenders seeing you cock back and then getting right in your chest, using that speed to power and blowing you right back to the quarterback. We didn't see that much as in college, but you will see that in the NFL. But also, you're susceptible when he's cocking back is that he misses punches that are there, where if he wasn't moving his arms back and he gets his arms extended, he could probably hold that pass rusher out of the pocket. Instead, because he's backing up, by the time he tries to come out and strike, the edge rushers around him, they already have the step on him, and now he's not getting that push. And that's when you talk about kind of lunging and leading and reaching. He does this little cock back move with his arms, which is something that needs to be improved. So I think when you talk about hand placement, it's just there's inconsistencies utilizing his hands, but he plays with very active hands. Utilize both inside and outside. You also see it on stunt pickups. You see the potential to utilize that drag hand to make sure that he's aware of any stunts in games. Again, you can see him do it a little bit more often than he does, but you see that drag hand that gets out there, that inside hand when protecting the edge. Does as well, and it's the hand placement. It's keeping his elbow inside to escape it. We saw it against Oklahoma, Nick Benito, where they might get a little inside, but he latches on. It's hard for those guys to escape while working downhill. Where he does have a good anchor is when he's able to really get his feet set under him. Okay, this is not something that you always see, but when he gets his feet set and you get that inside strike, he has a very legitimate anchor that I think could hold off a lot of guys in the NFL. Inconsistencies, trying to get those feet underneath him. Otherwise, there is kind of a natural lack somewhat of power there to really redirect players working the edge, but at the same time, you do see that where it doesn't always flow extremely well together with his hands and his feet. But what I love is just the recovery ability and the ability to redirect as a pass protector, because you're going to get beat. You're not always going to be in a great set where you're like, hey, I'm here, and you're running right into me. It just doesn't happen in the NFL. So can you recover, right? Can you reposition yourself? Can you stay on your feet? I can't have you falling all the time. For a guy at his height, you would think, man, he's going to be super top heavy, but he does a pretty nice job of keeping his elbows in, trying to keep his shoulders up, which I think could be a little bit better. Sometimes, again, he does tend to reach and lunge where he doesn't sync up his hands extremely well, but then keeping his head back. The coordination, it's the long arms. It's a guy that if you can have him protect the inside, and sometimes he leans a little bit to protecting the inside, which makes him susceptible, as we said, to those inside-outside rushes, where if you put a tight end on his side or you give him something to slow down the rush a little bit, he's going to be in a lot better spot. He can get off the line really well, and you see the variability here where he can jump off the line, get into sets early. It's just about, again, the snap count. But if you put a tight end on his side, you give him a little bit more time to really protect the inside, where it seems like he's probably his most vulnerable, and he feels like he is giving up the inside, so he kind of works to protect that with his feet.
Now, we talk about getting high, and quick sets usually does a good job of getting low off the line like we saw in that last rep, but here he gets a little tall, he's a little bit later off the line here, and it makes him susceptible. Yes, it's a quick set, so it doesn't get beat, but for these counters where he's out of balance.
But it's just about that flexibility, some of the coordination to reset, show the loose hips, and just open himself up. That way he can get himself back into the play versus edge rushers and not be extremely, clunky. Notice heel clicks. This showed up at the combine, specifically when he was just going through drills. After that initial kick out off the line where he's into his stance, then you see him start to try to corner and work the edge. You do see his heels click at times. His outside foot sometimes doesn't get a lot of depth. And then you have his post foot, which is kind of stepping on his outside foot. So there is some heel click notice there, but again, it can be cleaned up, and he does seem to work to try to keep, his knees bent. Plays a little high, but naturally he's going to play high, but he doesn't play straight up or hunched over. You do see work to try to keep his knees bent as a pass protector, so some of that flexibility, which he absolutely has. I also will throw in a small note here. I do wonder a little bit, does he get tired? Because I thought some games it looked like he got tired. You see him walking back like this. Noticed he did get it seemed like he got a little tired in certain games. So maybe the conditioning is something to throw out there. I don't know. Maybe it's not. It just seemed like body language wise, sometimes it looked like he was tired on the offensive line, but usually then he would come back and he'd finish strong. And you're like, okay, no, he's okay. Now, another thing that could be added as a pass rusher is finishing. And this is something that he doesn't really do right now. Now, again, when he gets latched on, he usually stays connected pretty well. So that is something. He usually tries to stay in phase with his pass rusher. So if he's running somebody out the edge and they fall down, he's going to stay on top of it and foul them, but he doesn't really finish. And this is an area where I think it definitely needs to be added to his game, where if you get a guy down, finish him. Don't, hey, like Mortal Kombat, finish it. Don't let him get back up and start running again. Finish these reps. It doesn't really have any finishing type of moves as a pass rusher, right? You see some of the Penny Sewell when he came out where he would, just chop down a defender's arms whenever they would try to use that speed into their chest. He chopped down and they'd go down with it. When they would try to lean on an arm, or Sewell would maybe give him something and he kind of back up and all of a sudden they're lunging and then he'd chop it down and they're falling down. You don't see that. You don't see that here. For him, he's a little bit more of a balanced, patient, let it come to me a little bit, let me get connected, let me wall off. You'd like to see a little more of those violent strikes, and he doesn't finish right now, which leads to, if a quarterback breaks the pocket and they start to escape, usually his defender takes off, and a lot of times he can tackle the quarterback because he doesn't finish the play. So that's something that probably just needs to be added. I know there's a lot of nuance that goes into that, but just the finishing ability. Not saying that he doesn't play with a good mindset. He does play physical, and you do see occasional reps of very legitimate strength when he's able to get his base under him. But to me, I think he needs to improve multiple areas as we hit on his run blocker and a pass protector. What is his role? Well, that's interesting. He obviously has elite size and length, which is exciting. I think for him, this is a guy that definitely has swing backup potential. Like, this is a swing backup tackle potential, which basically means he could play either tackle spot. I think there's very legitimate ability to do that. Just by the way that you see him move his feet, the way you see him pull, I believe that this guy could probably slide in and play right tackle. I know he hasn't done it, but I think he could do it. I think he has swing tackle upside just with his coordination in the lower body and his lean, his fluid movement, strengths. And as a run blocker inline right now, he's just not effective. He's just not very effective right now. So his best suit there would be playing as a, sixth offensive lineman, where he's not getting against the biggest bodies, but he's out there more for positioning and, just trying to tag guys. But consistency off the line of scrimmage, which will help if he's out there as a rotational piece. He's going to be, very good stamina. So, of course, staying low off the line. Little things need to be cleaned up. He's going to need work probably all over the place in terms of his technique. But it seems like there's a very legitimate foundation to build upon here. And you gotta admire that he did pretty much hold his own in the Big 12. Now, West Virginia gave him some problems. They didn't face the most best pass rushers. But games like Oklahoma, didn't see Benito a ton, but he did really darn well. Didn't give up sacks in that game. So there's legitimate ability here, which is exciting, whereas why there's so many teams interested coming out of high school, because you're like, dang, look what he can be. And even though he's on the older side, and you're like, wait a minute, how is he 24 years old and he's still like raw? Well, because he hasn't played offensive line that long. He comes into college and he's starting all these starts, 37 consecutive starts. You're like, that's a lot of starts. That's a lot of starts for a guy that hasn't really played football, right? He's coming here to play basketball. So that's super inspiring of what you think he could possibly become. I think there is legitimate swing backup potential here. He could absolutely use against some speed rushers, a little bit of help on his side. Played it for 2 years in high school, then come into Memphis and play like he did, and then TCU. He is picking up very fast, but I think he could use, obviously some weight work in the NFL until really his redshirt year in college as a freshman with Memphis. So there's areas that, you're going to be able to take time with him, even though he is 24 years old. That shouldn't really concern you because of his background. With that being said, I don't really see much guard potential here. Yes, do I think he get more drive on his blocks? Yes, but putting him at guard just doesn't make sense for his build, for how high he plays. It just does not make sense. I think he get his snap pretty quickly, but it just does not make sense to push him inside from tackle. I think left tackle, he likes left tackle, and that's fine, but I think there is swing tackle ability to put him on either side of the field, just from what I've seen with his feet. He has played left tackle all the way up to this point, so there is that side of it where it would be new to him. He has not played right tackle before, but that doesn't mean he can't do it, especially when you have time to develop and learn behind and you're not coming in to be a starter. He could definitely get that time to learn to be able to play both sides, but he's probably going to be much more comfortable at left tackle immediately. He could be a legitimate good pass protecting backup tackle. That's run blocking. Probably always going to be a little bit limited because of leverage. He's not the strongest guy right now anyway, which doesn't help either. So you could probably add to that a little bit, but he's more of a positional type of blocker that could possibly help you work towards the second level. So definitely a lot of areas need work, but at the same time, I don't want to act like, he can't do anything. Like he's got talent and he can play. So I think that's his role. He's a backup swing tackle potential, and he'll be competing with Matt Nelson for that role this offseason. Lions gave him some money. They liked him, and there could be very legitimate potential here because of his length, just his measurables alone, and just how coordinated he is, that it's hard to teach those type of things. You can teach a lot of things, but those two things are very difficult to teach in a player. So that's kind of my thought of what his role will be. I could absolutely see him winning that role, and I'm glad the Lions addressed this to at least bring in competition. That's all I wanted, was at least some legitimate competition this offseason, because last year we didn't have it, which was tough. We didn't really have competition because Dan Skipper went down, and then it was like, all right, Matt Nelson, you're the guy, but we don't have competition for you. That wasn't good. We got the guy from the Steelers, and he wasn't very good, so we were kind of going through it. To make that as an emphasis to go get a pretty big name UDFA, give him some guaranteed money, I think was very important, and he could play on both tackle spots, potentially. Right tackle, it's a little bit of a projection, but I think he could absolutely do it. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This is Obinna Eze. Thank you, for watching, and I'm out.